What's up, Thumbers? Welcome to another spoiler review from Hyper Rabbit Power Go. We are here to talk about Spider-Man Far From Home.
You don't want any part of this.
Dude.
Oh, man.
So good.
So, the final chapter of the Infinity Saga, the 23rd Marvel Studios
I think
picture.
22nd. Let's
23rd.
see. I always go 12 is
oh, God. Why did I ask?
Ant-Man.
Oh, God. Okay.
Here we
and
go.
then, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. This is the 23rd.
23rd
Okay.
Marvel Studios movie.
Wow.
I went into this movie. I don't know. I kind of went into it, and I feel like before this movie was announced and or before it was being made, I wasn't anticipating for this to be the final chapter of the Infinity Saga. I thought that was the role that Endgame was going to have.
Yeah.
So then when Kevin Feige came out and said, like, oh, actually, you know what, closing out the Infinity Saga, it's going to be Spider-Man Far From Home, I thought, do we really need to do it? But I guess now, understanding what the story and the plot is and knowing what the story and the plot is, by the way, this is a spoiler review, so we're going to spoil the shit out of this movie. I'm gonna edit that
There
out
you go.
again.
Edit
Cool.
that one out. Cool.
But it's not, to me, it's not the last part of the Infinity Saga. It's the epilogue.
Sure.
It's the winding down action. Even though there's a huge action, big Avengers villain threat thing, it still feels like it is a more personal. Here's how specific characters are reacting to the loss of some of the characters in Endgame, but also just like the world at large.
Yeah.
And they tackle it in a fun way, but that stuff was really interesting to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought, okay, cool. If we're going to deal with the sort of the outfall and the events of Avengers Endgame, and Tony Stark's death is going to play such a pivotal role in Spider-Man's life, then it makes sense why this movie was would sort of be the epilogue or the closing or whatever you want to call it, the final sort of like pin in the board of the entire Infinity Saga.
Yeah.
So I thought that in itself was somewhat not a challenge for the movie, but I think it was an obstacle, and it was something that it really did have to deal with without making it feel like this was just an epilogue to just like an event, like this being an Avengers epilogue. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
Where it's like I still want the story to be about Peter and how the events of the previous movies have influenced him and his world, but I don't want it to feel like it's just an Avengers movie.
Right. I think that this movie did a really good job of striking that balance because yes, if you are hired to direct a Spider-Man movie, if you're John Watts and they're like, hey, we want you to do this sort of Disney-Sony collaboration to Sony Film, but we're living in the world of the MCU, there's already a bunch of restrictions and a bunch of benefits.
Right.
And I think that Homecoming was able to play with both very well.
Yeah.
And I dug it. And to my opinion, I feel like I saw how that movie was like the building blocks of what could eventually happen. So I wasn't – there were a lot of people that were like, oh, it wasn't as good as the other Spider-Man movies because this, because that. And I get that, but at the same time, I feel like, again, the potentiality was laid down in that movie, and I was so excited about what could happen. The same way that the first Captain America movie didn't light the world on fire. Then you get to Winter Soldier, and people went, oh, okay, this is what you could have gotten to, but you kind of had to do that first step.
Yeah.
Homecoming was that for me. Now, when we get to Far From Home, I feel like it's not quite peak Spider-Man yet because it does feel like a step 2 of a 3-step program, of a 6-step program. I don't know what it's going to be, but I felt like the restrictions in play here were John Watts was like, okay, I'm back for the sequel. And they leaned over and they're like, here's what's going to happen. Tony Stark's going to die. Captain America's going to retire. Like they're telling him all this stuff. And he's like, oh, okay, crap. What's happening?
We're currently having an earthquake.
There was a small
Right now? Really?
Small shaky shake. Small shaky shake.
I'm not feeling it.
We're good now.
I feel it.
I'm not feeling it.
It's still going, but you're good.
It's still going?
Sorry.
But
It's
we're
a small
good?
shaky shake. Yeah.
So John Watts is being told this by Marvel Studios, like, cool. We're going to have you come back to do part 2. But again, this is what's happening in the world, and your movie has to address it. It can't just be a solo Spidey story.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what are the benefits of that, story-wise?
Yeah.
What are the benefits? Well, here's the benefits. You can have a story about Peter Parker growing out of the shadow of Tony Stark, which is, like, so good. It leads to some amazing Spidey stuff that just nails it. And I mean, I want to talk about Mysterio. I want to talk about J. Jonah Jameson. I want to talk about these things that were like, holy shit. But to basically sum up, like, I still think that I might prefer Homecoming. I need to see – I've only seen Far From Home once, and I want to see it another time to sort of see where I rank it in the MCU movies and in the Spidey movies. But it is definitely top 3 Spidey movies for me. It goes Spider-Verse and then the 2 John Watts
I
films.
almost feel like Spider-Verse is its own category of amazing.
I know.
I feel like it is.
Listen, it's number 1 with a bullet, but then
Right.
we're talking down here
What's
where
the one, but like a 2?
Sure. But in terms of the larger MCU, I feel like Homecoming was a bit more, I kind of want to say put together.
I don't disagree with you.
Because for me, the movie was up to a certain point fine. Like I'm enjoying myself. There's a lot of great MJ Peter stuff that was happening, which me as an MJ guy, I was like loving this. Everything else in the movie, like them in Europe necessarily, like the sort of villain threat, all that stuff, I was like, this is all right. Then the movie had the moment where it is an info dump. But when Gyllenhaal, when they put him in the background of Captain America: Civil War,
okay, you won me over.
Here's the deal: before they explained it, and the hologram started going down in the bar, and I saw Peter Billingsley walk around the bar, I had leaned over to Abby, and I'm like, "That's Peter Billingsley. He's from Iron Man 1. Holy shit! Like I was already like, oh my god, what's happening? This is Iron Man 1. What's happening?" And then the movie pointed out, and they showed the scene. Tony Stark built us in a cave with a box of scraps. My only problem with that scene is, even though it would have been so stupid, I wanted them to insert every Stark employee in the background of every MCU movie. I was like, dude, I'm like, just go for it. I'm like,
at this point, you've already done
Iron Man 2 drone tech. I'm like, put him in Iron Man 3. Put him in the back of Age of Ultron. Put him in Ant-Man. Like, just those zoom-ins of where they're in. Because I thought the Jake Gyllenhaal bit was so funny, where he's in the back, like, he called it barf, and that made him want to be evil. So from that point to the end of the movie, I was like, this is a ride, and I loved it. I loved basically every minute of that point to the end of the film. So overall, I still feel like I prefer Homecoming kind of as a complete thing. But this movie had some moments that are like some top Spidey moments for me. That again, maybe because I wasn't as hyped or thinking about this movie as much as I was Endgame. That it really did. I sat down and I was like, holy shit, I'm watching a Spider-Man movie, and oh my god,
what am I seeing?
And what am I seeing? So those are my overall thoughts. I really dug this movie, and I think that there are some specific moments that are like 10 out of 10.
Absolutely. I agree. There was some moments in this movie. Cynthia and I were watching this, and she is kind of jaded by movies. She doesn't really like to go to movies very often.
We've ruined them for her.
No, it was just her. Just her. That's just how she is.
She just ruins it for herself.
She was on the edge of her seat. She was like, oh, my God, I've never seen this. And I feel like for somebody who's not invested in comic books like we are, and she is not that, I feel like at this point after watching this movie, she could jump into any Peter Parker comic book, any Spider-Man comic book, and enjoy and really realize who this person is, because I feel like this Spider-Man movie really hit Peter Parker on the head. The entire time I was watching this movie, I was like, poor kid. He just wants to tell Zendaya that he loves her.
Let him talk to Zendaya.
And I remember, because I remember in 8th grade making plans like that about a cute girl that I wanted to sit next to on the bus. And I remember we went to a skating.
Aren't boys dumb?
Yeah, we're really stupid.
But Ned is smart, because he's like, okay, here's the thing. Don't do that. Don't do any of that.
Exactly. But then he's like, hey, babe. He gets a girlfriend immediately on the plane. But I remember
we broke up.
I remember
that was so good.
I remember in 8th grade we were going to a roller skating rink, right? And there was this cute girl who I wanted to roller skate with, and I was like, so there's like those quarter machines that have necklaces. I'm gonna get a quarter, and I'm gonna get a necklace for her, and then I'm gonna give it to her while we're skating, and then we're gonna hold it, and that's what kids do. And I identified.
And by the time you figured it out, it was time to go home.
Yeah, exactly. She was already skating with some other dude. And then so I was like heartbroken. So I so identified with this Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And the entire time I was like, poor kid. He just wants to enjoy this trip. He wants to enjoy Prague. He wants to go to Paris. I'm just
too.
like,
Can I just say?
Wasn't it fucking amazing?
The fact that they went to Prague. The fact that we went to Prague,
and we were there
last year,
right after, filming,
But even if we weren't, the fact that the first time I'd ever been to Europe, we went to Prague, we went to Berlin, enhanced those sequences in the movie for me so much.
We should have just done the Far From Home tour.
That's why you travel, Hector.
Yeah, we should have just gone to Venice and London.
When they're on the bridge, when they're in Prague, I'm like, yeah, that would be a good vantage point. I know exactly where that is.
I know exactly where they are.
What an awesome party. Why aren't they going to the Festival of Lights? And then when they go to the opera in that crappy theater, I leaned over to Abby and I was like, this was like that blacklight theater. We went and saw that thing in Prague. I was like, if they do blacklight theater, I am going to. So
lose it.
I loved it, dude. My heart was like, this is awesome that they're showing off Prague, and it was great.
So I think that's another reason why I identified and I like this movie. I mean, I know why you liked it.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
They did Prague right.
They did it right. Absolutely. But other than that, I feel like the villain in this was up to Spider-Man Homecoming level.
Vulture,
I feel like they really did Jake Gyllenhaal right in this. And yes, the info dump happened. And the first half of the movie kind of dragged for me, honestly. Like the first half was just a bit too much. I like that they spiced it up with Ned and all that stuff, and they made it really you really felt Peter Parker coming back into his world, but at the same time it just dragged. As soon as that info dump happened, Jake Gyllenhaal turned it on, dude. Like him as the villain, I was just like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted from Mysterio. And I didn't realize, because the only real other time I ever saw Mysterio work like really well was in the animated series when he was just a VFX artist knocking buildings down and stuff. When he took Peter on that crazy psychedelic fight thing,
which y'all did not see in 3D. I saw it in 3D. It was phenomenal.
I believe it.
I
believe it.
I was like, holy shit, this might be the best 3D sequence in like a live action movie I've ever seen. Like it was so good that it shot Mysterio up to the top of like maybe, like some of my all-time fave like villains.
That's
like
what I'm saying.
It for me that whole sequence perfectly justified why they tried Mysterio.
Right, exactly. And I'll end it with this. Every time that Mysterio did something, I was always questioning, is this real? Is this real? He had me questioning my reality.
Oh, at
that's
the end,
how you know somebody's
at the
affected.
End, when he's on the bridge and he's dying, I was like, that's not real. I'm like,
that's not real. That's not it.
Peter, watch out. That's not real.
Turn
that's not
around.
Real. And then he grabbed it because he tried to fire a gun at him, and I was like, yes, good.
I don't understand how he shot himself, though. How did he die? Because Mysterio was going to shoot
it.
Mysterio was going to shoot Peter at the very end, and he sensed him with his And what did Peter do to the gun that made Mysterio shoot himself?
He shot himself? I don't
How
think
did
he
he
shot
die?
himself. I think that he was like for real wounded.
He was already wounded. Oh, so he was legit wounded by the drone.
But I don't think he died at the end. Even though he sent that
ruse.
Video to the Daily Bugle, I also think it's a ruse. I think that they sort of made it that they killed him off. But remember, Peter said, "Is this real?" And Edith was like, "All of the illusions are down."
Yeah.
She didn't say.
She didn't confirm that
vital.
It's real.
It wasn't like Friday at the end of Endgame where it's like life signs critical. Like it wasn't that. It was all the illusions are down, which meant that he really did like pass out or whatever. But I'm sure that he bounced back.
I don't think he's done.
Anyways,
here's what I need to say.
Love this movie.
Here's what I need to say about Mysterio. My opinion has changed. Because for years I was like, don't do Mysterio.
We talked about it a lot.
So much.
Don't do Mysterio because his powers to me were he is a movie special effects expert. Don't put a character like that in a film that requires movie special effects where you're going to reveal that him doing things that seem as though they're magic are not actually magic. I felt like what I was trying to say then was I don't think that the Spider-Man movies or those universes are anywhere near the point where they could basically pull that off.
Right.
Cut to
and then the Avengers happened.
But not just that. The fact that they use barf, the fact that they use the hologram thing from Captain America: Civil War. I was like,
dude.
as soon as that happened, I'm gonna curse. You're gonna have to bleep this out.
It's fine.
I went, well, fuck me. That's the way to do it. Like I was like, you guys, that's the way to do it because if we bought that then,
in 2016,
in 2016 for Tony Stark's little vanity project, which I love the way that they spun that. Just to be able to tell the story in that film and for us to get that flashback but still have it be in real time. Right. Cut to this, I'm like, okay, if you're going to tell me that it's advanced hologram technology, I'm in.
It better be legit.
I'm in, and it was legit. And not only that, but here's what I love too. This movie comes after, Mysterio comes after Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
So went to go see it with Abby. She didn't know anything about this movie or Mysterio.
Right.
So when the twist happened for her, she was like, after we got out of the movie, she was asking me about Mysterio. She goes, are any of his powers magical in the comics? I'm like, no.
Nothing.
This is all straight up an amazing adaptation. Like it feels like it's a one-to-one other than instead of movie effects, it's like holograms.
Right, exactly.
Which he does use holograms in the comic books. Like that's part. He also uses like hallucinogenic gas and stuff to get into Peter's head. So the fact that Abby, as an audience member, was coming from, okay, Doctor Strange exists in this world. Even one of the kids, I think, said he's like a combination of Doctor Strange and Iron Man, but cooler or whatever. That helps sell the idea that, like, the stuff he's doing, we buy it.
Yeah.
And then the score was done by Michael Giacchino, who also did Doctor Strange. So when Mysterio first shows up, I heard the music, I was like, this is a little Doctor Strangey. And I was like, mwah, perfect. That's the way you do it. Trick us into thinking he actually has legit powers. And then here's the last thing that I loved so hard about Mysterio.
Adam hasn't said a word yet, so make sure it's the last thing.
This is it. the fact that this dude wears a mocap suit.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I was like,
oh my God.
I was like, you sons of bitches, you did it. That's perfect.
And people would not know, but the way he talks when he's directing the action inside the mocap suit is exactly how you get notes when you're doing shots.
Yup.
It was.
It was.
It was.
It was. I was
and
just
Peter
like,
Billingsley was like a VFX artist.
Yeah.
Like,
He
you
was
want
like,
it? You want it faster? He's like, more destruction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But I'm
exactly.
like, how are you just going to press a button and render all that? That's painstaking animation.
Yeah,
that takes
it
a long time,
Yeah.
Peter Billingsley.
Yeah.
And when the suit errors out and part of it's not working, he's like, oh yeah, we lost one of the drones. I'm like, this is like when a plugin doesn't work in Nuke.
Yep,
Oh,
exactly.
oh God, it's real.
I was having
it's real.
flashbacks. Okay.
I honestly,
hit us, Adam.
that moment in the movie when it's revealed that he wears a mocap suit with the fishbowl and everything and the microphones, I was like, this. You could not have done Mysterio even 10 years ago.
Agreed.
No.
You needed the technology and all the elements surrounding the technology of visual effects and motion capture to get to the point where it is now in order for the audience, a modern-day audience, to understand exactly how that works and to sell it.
And the fictional technology, again, within the
Exactly.
MCU. Within the MCU to where we bought it. Yeah.
Exactly, because I think without Captain America Civil War and without them really introducing that tech, barf, I don't think there really would have been a good enough way to do it in world that would have convinced people out of the world in real life that they're like, that's a plausible, real thing to do.
And I love, too, that it is another blue-collar criminal who is like a pissed-off guy who got screwed over by Stark.
Right.
Like, that's how he feels it. Because that ties into Spider-Man villains, period. Like, outside of Osborn, who's a billionaire, everybody else is a tech-based, they're robbing banks. Why? Because they need money. And Vulture, they did the same thing with Vulture, but with Chitauri technology. How are you going to explain he's got those crazy advanced wings? Is he ripping off the Falcon? No. Chitauri technology. All right, I buy it. Whatever. Cool.
Clean
cool.
through. Yep.
And I agree with you guys. I think the beginning of the movie was kind of like things were just happening and nothing was really like there was no real deep story elements. I think there were some great character moments with Zendaya and Tom Holland and
with Happy dating May.
And Happy and May dating was such great stuff.
That's a blip beard. I grew it during the blip.
There were such funny moments with that. And honestly, speaking of the blip, what I thought was done so smart was instead of trying to maybe like circumvent all the details of what happened during the blip, the fact that they just went full on and addressed it. When I blipped back, I was in my apartment and there was people that lived there that like I didn't know.
The high
and
school
we were
band,
all confused.
The high school band was on the court.
The fact that, and it's stuff that we have talked about leading into Endgame. Everybody on Twitter and social media was talking about, are they going to address it? Yes, no, maybe.
They did.
The fact that they just went, all this stuff that you guys were speculating on social media, all of this happened.
It all happened.
And the fact that they were able to do it quickly and effectively in the very beginning of the movie, I thought worked so incredibly well.
And
the
in
jokes
a way
about people outgrowing and aging up.
Poke fun at it.
Yeah.
Poke fun at it. Because
I
it's
loved
not,
all that stuff.
it's not that important, at least in the context of this story. We had the dramatic weight happen at the end of Endgame.
Yeah.
But to keep things moving forward, and then maybe that's another reason I didn't love the kind of first half of the film.
Yeah.
But then when we got to Peter Parker finally emoting in the plane with Happy, where he was talking about, I miss him. I'm like, okay, this is maybe what I was missing from the beginning of the movie. But the thing that you just said about Aunt May and her helping like homeless folks that had been displaced.
Yeah.
But then also Flash Thompson being like, hey, Penis Parker, and then him being like, he's not at 21. He's, he's like, wait, no.
That.
So good.
All of that
Zendaya
stuff.
calls him out.
Yeah.
Oh, he was blipped.
Let me let you in on something. All of that I had heard from a buddy of mine, I think I told you guys, who works at a trailer house like a year plus ago.
Yeah.
When we were, because he was like, hey, I'm working on Spider-Man. We're doing Spider-Man.
I will just say we had to
Yeah.
we had to work so hard to not let any of that slip while we did this show.
Yes, because we
knew it a long time ago.
After Avengers Infinity War last year, everybody online was like, they're just going to undo it and there's no stakes. And once my buddy who told me, who was working on Spider-Man Far From Home, was telling me, no, 5 years go by and the world has changed, I went, brilliant. That's the way that the decision that they make, which they are going to undo and bring everybody back, obviously, is going to give us stakes and real weight, and that's what you're supposed to do. That's the perfect thing to do. So when we went to go see Endgame, and the 5 years later, and people were like, "No," I was like,
"They did it. Okay, here we go."
They stuck with it.
It's and all of this to say, because this was sort of in the making before Infinity War came out.
Yeah, John Watts was already working on this while they were making Endgame and Infinity War.
All of this to say, in Marvel Studios we trust. Like you know what I mean? Like they really are thinking about the stuff that audiences are thinking about Now, have there been some reactionary stuff depending on how audiences have felt about stuff? Absolutely. But overall, that plan is tight. Zendaya is MJ in this was
I love Zendaya.
Amazing.
She was so good.
Amazing. She was so good.
She has been my favorite female counterpart. And I really like Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield. I thought they had really good chemistry, and I thought she was great. But I think Zendaya, the fact that they've made her such an independent character who just the decisions and the quips that she makes and how she treats Peter behind the scenes, but also how, I don't know, just the use of their relationship and their strengths as actors was done so incredibly well, and it made me just love that character, love MJ so much. She, to me, is probably the standout in this movie because of what she brings to the movie. And I love Peter and I love Ned, but to me, MJ, who I don't want to say she was silent, but she was definitely supporting because it was all about Peter and Liz.
In the first.
In Spider-Man Homecoming. And in this one, to just sort of like jump out the screen and she's like, I'm here, I'm MJ, let's go on this adventure together. I loved all that so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, Scrolls. We got to talk about the Scrolls.
Wait, let's see. I want to hear Adam talk about Prague.
Oh, okay.
Oh. This movie won me over when they announced that they were going to Prague.
Yeah.
So to be able to like go sit in that movie and they cut to and end up in Prague, I was like, this is just me. I'm just gonna sit here and cry. I loved it so much. And seeing all the places that we went to, and some of the stuff that they shot that was supposed to be Prague is shot in a different city that I've also been to. But it was just so great to see all that stuff and to see. My favorite moment in that movie, because it's very important to the movie, is when MJ and Peter are on the Charles Bridge. And she tells him, I know you're Spider-Man. And there's these quips back and forth. I was like 85% sure, but now, you know. But the fact that it's like such an important moment in not only the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in Peter Parker's story, took place in Prague. I loved it.
Mijo, you had your Coco moment.
I did.
You had your Coco
I
moment.
did. That was my Coco moment.
When Peter was like, I want to go do something outside that's not on the itinerary, I was like, take her to Charles Bridge. Take her to the Charles Bridge.
You know what's up. You know what's
Good
up.
man.
The very first shot of the bus pulling into Prague was right under the bridge, right where we ate at that locale. That locale, the one across the bridge. I was like, locale's right there. And Cynthia and I were just like calling out all the places that we were at.
And it was amazing. So romantic, and it was like
it made me just so happy.
Their relationship made me all giddy and shit. Like from back in the day.
It felt like middle school, high school.
Yeah,
it did.
I think that's a huge testament to the writers. The fact that the writers could write a story about teenagers today, but still make it feel so relatable.
Absolutely.
Like from where we grew up in the 90s to now, it's a very different time, and young kids live a very different life than we do. But the fact that the writers were able to do such a good job, and I think a lot of that also is a testament to John Watts as the director and how he's able to work with these young actors.
Yes.
And how he's able to take the writing on the paper and work out with these actors, okay, how do we want to make this feel as natural as possible and have it feel fun and all this sort of stuff and romantic?
Jacob Batalon as Ned is so fantastic. Tony Revolori as Flash is always great. Like, super fun. The young actress who played
Betty Brant.
Betty Brant.
She was
amazing.
So good.
Hilarious. And, and then the new guy. The kid who went from the little kid to the hunky guy, he was great too. And people are like, "Make him Prince Eric in the new Mermaid movie," and I'm like, "Yeah, he looks like Prince Eric. That's great." Like but some of the teenager stuff in the first half was a little sitcom-y where it's like, all right, really, there's going to be a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that's going to ask Peter Parker to take off his pants take a picture. I'm like, that's a little, but again, towards the end of the movie, it did all come together.
It did.
I think the beginning of the movie seemed to be really reworked quite a bit because there's a lot of stuff in the trailers that did not show up
for
in the
sure.
movie.
Sometimes when the movie started, it was that opening in Mexico, and then the Marvel Studios logo came in with the Whitney Houston and and then all the stuff after that, I was like, oh, okay, he's not going to get his passport. Oh, okay. It felt a little kind of jumpy,
reworked
to kind of
a little bit.
But again, Mysterio twist to the end.
Yeah.
So before we get back to the mid-credit scene, I want to talk about post-credit scene, the Skrulls. That it was the Skrulls.
I'm still
Talos.
So I'm still kind of on the fence about the Skrulls.
Okay.
Just because I feel like I expected so much of one thing, and they are not that. Like, they are not that evil alien race that we know of. Right. So at this point, I'm just like, look, if they were able to tell Nick Fury that, oh yeah, we'll take over for you. I'll represent you on Earth, whatever. That's cool, and I believe it. But maybe it's part of their plan to like really get everybody to buy in, and then they can start that whole invasion.
I feel that Talos and his wife's forget the character's name that were doubling as Fury and Maria Hill really are good guys, but. The fact that
there are Skrulls that exist,
but the fact that it cuts to Fury in space. Here's what I've seen some people make the comparison to. This is the end of the Infinity Saga, of everything up to this point.
Right.
At the end of Iron Man 1, Fury shows up and says, "You become part of a bigger universe." At the end of Spider-Man, he's at the post-credit scene, literally part of a bigger universe.
Yeah.
People are like, is he looking forward to Phase 4? And they're declaring it's going to be
the
cosmos.
greater universe.
It's going to be
It's
space.
going to be Sword.
Yeah.
It's going to be Sword. It's going to be space. It's going to be
Sword
in that
shield,
huge ship full of Skrulls. Is there like a faction that's like, you know, bad guys that
The
want to
Super
take
Skrulls?
that want to take over Earth? The Super Skrulls.
Yeah.
Like, what other sort of alien planets are we going to see?
Right,
Is it going
right.
to tie into Captain Marvel? I dug it. I thought it was so smart because going back to the Skrulls' appearance in Captain Marvel, my whole thing was, oh, dude, now the sort of story floodgates are open. At any point, any character can
Could be a Skrull.
could be a Skrull.
Yeah,
And they did it in the post credits of this, where I
Yep,
was like, I should have known Fury was a Skrull the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, and that's exciting
Yeah.
because it's going to make again, like when you read the Secret Invasion comic books, it does make you, when they revealed certain characters, it made you go back and go, damn, when did they get replaced?
Yeah.
At what point did they?
Makes you wonder.
Because now I'm already thinking, was it Fury at the funeral or was it Talos?
Yeah,
I think it
exactly.
was Fury.
I think
I
that
think
was
Nick
so,
would
too.
show
Yeah.
up to Tony's funeral.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And right after that,
I
he's
feel it'd be
like,
cheap if they're like, it was Talos.
yes.
Like, no, don't do that.
I think right after that he goes, I'm going on vacation. I need you to look
Yeah.
after the kid. Tell him
Yeah.
you saw him at the funeral, but you didn't talk to him because it wasn't appropriate.
Right, right,
Bloop,
right.
And I'm on vacation, or I'm on another mission.
Yeah,
and
because
then
what happened to Captain Marvel after the movie?
Right.
Endgame, you know?
Took
Probably
Fury
went
up
with
there.
him.
Took
So
Fury up
that's
there.
why he said we do not invoke her name.
Yes, because I think Talos still has some beef with Carol,
course,
which
yeah.
is so. And that,
Yeah.
when that moment happened, I was like, oh, he did say that. Dang
Yeah,
it!
he
I
did,
should have.
he
I
did,
wasn't
yeah.
thinking like a comic book guy.
Yeah, I know,
should have been.
I know.
So that was amazing. And the other thing that happened that was similar to the end of Iron Man 1, his secret identity gets revealed.
Yes.
My bros, we got to talk
That's-
about this.
that's-
Everybody's flipping out about this mid-credit
Yeah.
sequence, and I'm very mixed feelings about it.
Me
I
too.
am as
Me too.
well. Here's also, and this kind of goes back to the villains, right? I like Mysterio a lot as a villain.
Yeah.
I hope that now that we're going to go into potentially the third movie of the Spider-Man franchise, I no longer want the villains to have been spawned from the Avengers universe.
Okay.
Iron Man or
Okay.
any of those characters.
Okay.
I
Ooh,
want
can I-
Spider-Man
can
villains
I-
to be spawned from Spider-Man because of Spider-Man.
Can I give you a prediction?
Sure.
When Peter at the end is like flipping down and floating to go pick up Zendaya, MJ, he goes through what was the Avengers Tower,
Right.
Tony Stark's tower. And remember, in Homecoming, they sold it.
Yes.
And in this version, there's a huge hole in the middle with a bunch of cool like greenery and
Yeah,
a
yeah,
garden
yeah.
that he
A
sort of
balcony and stuff.
floats through.
Yeah.
I'm calling it. I'm like, that's Oscorp. And people were saying
okay,
this at the
okay.
end, and I'm like, I think they're planting the seeds to make that
think so,
something
too.
significant and
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Oscorp could be the one who generates the villains at this
Yeah,
point, which
I
I'm
think
fine
so.
if everything in the Spidey world kind of revolves around that, because to me, Norman Osborn is the Joker to Spider-Man's Batman.
Yes.
To me, so
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm cool if Octavius is an employee there,
Yeah.
if Flint
Yeah,
Marco's
yeah.
an experiment there. This is Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
All of the characters, Electro gets generated there. You know, we needed the first few from the Avengers world, but
Right.
that's my prediction, and I agree with you. And
Yeah.
let's go from there.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's my biggest thing about the villain. So I hope that now, because of this, now that his secret identity has been revealed, they can use that and play with those concepts
Right,
of these villains
Do
now
y'all-
being influenced by that. But I'm also kind of torn on it because I loved the fact that Spider-Man was
Yeah.
one of the only characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe who kept the
Right.
identity because he's still
Same.
young.
Right.
I think there could have
Listen.
been time to do
Listen.
that,
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
I don't know where that could go.
There could still be there's so many things happening here. First of all, do y'all know what happened in the comic books after his identity gets revealed? Do y'all remember?
They hunt his family down.
Aunt May gets shot
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
goes into a coma.
Right.
And that's the first thing I thought of.
I'm like, Marissa, you better
You
not
better
touch
be
a
aware
hair
of
on her
there.
head.
Bulletproof vest.
Whew.
Here-
So then, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, here's the thing about the reveal for me.
yeah.
Whenever a villain reveals that he knows Peter's identity,
Yeah.
it's terrifying to me. Like I get scared. I'm just like, fuck,
Yeah.
no. And now it's just like, sorry, Adam, I just had
It's
to
all
make you. So it's just it took away from that, but I feel like they have bigger plans.
Yes.
With this
So
reveal.
It's going to go one of two ways. One, they're going to lean into it and actually be like, you know what?
Yeah.
This is Spider-Man now.
Yeah.
Like this, we're going to figure out the story to get this to work, and this is just he has a public identity.
Yeah.
The second option is, remember, this movie takes place in 2023.
Right.
Like I've been saying, I feel like the next phase, the next focus of movies could be these sort of prequel films that are maybe in between the 5 years,
Right.
before the 5 years. All of this to lead us up to, because next year is 2020. The year after that, 2021,
Yeah.
2022, and then we're kind of caught up. And
Yeah.
it's like, would it be crazy if a Spider-Man movie didn't come out until 2022, 2023? When is the next one coming out? It could come out and literally pick up right where this one left off, and it would still like line up timeline-wise. And I feel like they're aware of that, and I think that a lot of these Eternals, Shang-Chi, the Black Widow prequel are all sort of setups so that when we get caught up in 2023, it's like, and now here's Eternals 2, and they're in the present day. And now here's Shang-Chi 2, or he's on the Avengers, and it's in the present day. So that's what I think could happen. But the second option could be, if this thing picks up right where it left off, remember who revealed that identity? This mother effer, who's apparently now like an InfoWars guy, which I love and I hate.
Yeah.
Because
I hate it for the right reasons.
Exactly.
Because first of all, I want to set aside the casting for a second. I'm going to put a pin in that because I got some mixed feelings on that. Very, very mixed. Boy, oh boy. But the fact that he's coming out with an InfoWars logo that's the Daily Bugle, and I'm like, this guy's like putting a kid's life on blast. I'm going, this might be a little too close to reality, and I might want them to which would be amazing for the story. Because a part of me is like, but J. Jonah Jameson's supposed to be kind of a good guy, even though he's a dick. He's like a good person, but a dick. And straight up, they're making him a bad person. Like, they're making him put a 16-year-old's life on blast. They're making him, I love that he was like, Mysterio is going to be the greatest hero of all time. And I'm like, that's perfect. But this is something that if they're going to go down this route, I'm really hoping that I mean, honestly, J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson could be like the villain of the next one.
I mean, he could.
Full on the villain. And a part of me wants it to be a different take than the Raimi movies, but also, I mean, hair aside, but also like again, the same take, because that character was so perfectly done. I get that. But he was also, who's the guy that brings the pictures of Spider-Man? I don't know. His stuff comes in the mail. He's a good guy. So it's this weird thing where I'm like, wow. But here's what to say. The second path could be Peter Parker, whoever can help him, whatever his resources are, to take that secret back and to go, no, this guy's full of shit. Like the family of Peter Parker are suing him. Again, just like the Sandy Hook thing with the InfoWars guy. It's like they could do something like that where it's like, oh, actually, J. Jonah Jameson is a terrible person, and he was lying about the whole thing, and Spider-Man is not this kid. Spider-Man is somebody who we don't know. Like, they could end up taking that away, is what I'm saying.
Spider-Man 3 is going to be a docu-court drama.
And Matt Murdock will be his attorney. You're welcome.
You just blew his mind.
Yes! For the first time in 5 years, I blew his mind.
Kevin Feige did say the contracts for the Netflix actors could be a while before they could show up in movies and blah, 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 blah. And then here comes Charlie Cox. He's like, I'll be representing Mr. Parker and his family. He comes in and So here's the deal.
Spider-Man 3 docudrama.
J.K. Simmons, how did you guys feel about them bringing him back?
That's a good choice. I mean, who else? Really, who else?
So this was a little spoiled for me, but I didn't realize that it was spoiled for me because I saw pictures from the premiere of Spider-Man Far From Home, and someone posted a photo of not J. Jonah Jameson, J.K. Simmons.
Why was he there? Why did they let him go?
So when I saw that, I thought, oh, are they just being nice and just inviting actors from the previous Spider-Man movies? Or is he going to show up as
Topher
J.
Grace
Jonah?
there? Is Tom Hardy there? No, none of the other actors are there.
Tobey
Maguire's walking up
in terms of the casting, exactly what you're talking about, I also agree that it could go one of two ways. But I think what the potential that it could lead to is
the
potentiality. What it could lead to is, yes, they may set up J. Jonah Jameson to be somewhat of a shady, potentially crooked and or bad character, but I think I don't think he necessarily knows the age of Peter Parker. I think he knows it's Peter Parker, but doesn't necessarily know that it could be a high school kid.
Okay.
I think once he finds that out, he will realize, and I think because they will probably, if he becomes a character in the third movie, they may establish a relationship between those two characters, and J. Jonah will come to realize who Peter Parker is and what he represents, and it could shift J. Jonah Jameson as a character.
If the storyline of a B plot or whatever is him being like, I made a terrible mistake, that would also be kind of amazing. Like that, especially speaking to...
It's a redemption somewhat.
Especially speaking to how easily warped a lot of the news is today, and how those people seem to not have souls when they straight up lie for money, and that whole side of the news world. So that could be crazy. But so a part of me totally understands and loves the fact that JK was brought back.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Even with the different hair, and I'm like, that's awesome.
Great.
Another part of me is kind of like, I really wish that they had cast... So as soon as they say J. Jonah Jameson, I'm like, I want it to be Terry Crews, Ice Cube. There's other casting to make us go, oh, that's perfect to set up for later. Just because I love how different and new this franchise was versus the. But if this is the one Judi Dench playing M again in the new, more better and improved sort of James Bond universe, again, I get that. It's like. I don't know. It's I don't want them to.
There's a lot of baggage coming with this casting choice.
The J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson is a wonderful character, but he is a Raimi character. Like he fits in that exaggerated world.
Right.
And J.K. Simmons is a phenomenal actor,
Absolutely.
and he can scare the shit out of me, like just amazing. So it's like I almost want. It was such a great tease, but like I hope he's like a major character in 3, and I want to see how this one's different while still allowing JK to crush it. Right. And I don't know. Like again, a part of me gets it, but another part of me is almost upset that it feels like they would almost give in to like fan casting, which I'm like, but don't do that, because fan casting normally is not a good idea and not a good thing to sort of give into. Do you see what I'm saying?
I can see how you could draw that line, but
I'm hoping that as Marvel Studios came up with this idea years ago and we're finding the right way to. That's what I hope. It was never them like, we heard what you guys were saying and we did it because.
I
don't do that.
Don't feel, for some reason this choice doesn't feel like that to me. There's just something behind it where I'm just like, I feel like if they were gonna pay that kind of homage to the Raimi-verse, then there would be more touches of that throughout the movie.
I get that. Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like he's a great character choice. I'll take this one. I'll take this one as long as this is the only one. I don't need anything else from those movies.
I don't necessarily need to see like Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst and all this other stuff.
No, don't need to see any of that stuff.
I'm also glad, speaking on that topic, that none of this movie was legit multiverse. I'm so glad it was all fake. Like
we called bullshit.
So we actually have not talked about that. Yeah. So
makes me so happy.
So you like the fact that they
absolutely
end up not being a multiverse. Basically.
Absolutely, yes. Great. I love the fact that the Avengers films and the MCU up to this point has established that, because again, Endgame was all about that. Right. Cap ended up in an alternate universe, and that's kind of my take on it, and that's what I agree with. But I did not want this movie to be the one that comes out right after Spider-Verse to almost steal some of that thunder, to use that as like a storytelling crutch, to just kind of fall back on all that. Versus, no, Mysterio is lying to us. Yes. That's the more interesting thing for me, and I think more authentic and better for Mysterio as a character, and better overall for the story and all that.
I think it's all better all for the universe right now, at least, because
too early.
It looks like they're going to hit us with some scroll stuff.
Yes.
When we don't necessarily need multi-universal scrolls coming in at one point.
Don't worry about that. Focus on space.
Focus on
United
Nick Fury
States
in
space. Read my lips. F-U-R-E. Fury, bitches. That's what we're dealing with.
F-U-R-E? Cool.
Yeah.
F-U-R-E.
Spelling.
F-U-R-E. Fury.
There was also a lot of really cool Easter eggs, but I think my favorite one that Emily pointed out to me was at the end when he's swinging through New York with MJ. When they land on the street, behind them there's like a construction. It's a construction site, and it has like a decal on the wall, and it says like we look forward to showing you what we have in store for the future, I think. And then it had a 1, a 2, and a 3, and then a question mark. And I loved that. Like those touches in the background to me, I was like, oh, this is great stuff.
I heard about that. I didn't see it.
Yeah, that type of stuff is really, really fun.
Cool.
What are your final thoughts on the movie? Good luck.
Loved it. Not my favorite MCU movie. It's okay. I think I still prefer overall Homecoming, but I need to see Far From Home again to kind of solidify how I feel about it. But to go back to what I said earlier, they nailed so many aspects to me that were so key and improved on things that I never thought that they could just knock it out of the park. Mysterio. The thing that I think that they nailed, which is the most important thing, the beginnings of the blossoming relationship between Peter Parker and MJ.
And where things get complicated for Peter.
Yes.
Things get very... as soon as they kissed, I was like, oh, things are about to get real complicated for you, homie. But, okay.
But what a great kiss. On the London Bridge, he's all messed up.
He kind of like leaned in like a half hug, and I was just like, I see you.
It's high school.
Yeah, exactly.
It's middle school, high school.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, and then she had her mace. She's like, okay, I should probably head back. I'm like, y'all are too cute.
Yeah.
Y'all are too cute. I love it.
I love it. My final thoughts on this one is I feel that this was the perfect movie to establish Peter Parker as a character. Not Spider-Man. Peter Parker, we understand him. We believe him. And everything he does from now on, you're going to feel the emotional weight of all the choices he has to make in the future. Yeah. This is perfect. It's the perfect setup for Peter Parker.
I agree. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that worked for me. I do think that the beginning was a little wonky and weird. I was hoping that this movie would also address a little bit more of May and Peter's relationship after she finds out that he's Spider-Man. Yeah. But I understand that dealing with the fact that she finds out he's Spider-Man, then they get decimated. There's a whole lot of other stuff that happens. So I get that. Hopefully we'll address it in the next movie. And obviously the revelation of his identity will play a big part into that as well.
How great was it? Are you two dating? Yes. Well,
no.
Yeah.
Well,
they're both
she's on summer fling.
Summer fling. Well, yes, they could lead into something that could blossom into something. Well, yeah, we don't know where it leads.
He's all, we're all interconnected.
I love it. And I think that's the thing about this movie. I think it gets really, really good once the revelation of Mysterio happens.
Yeah.
Then I think it's firing on all cylinders. I think in the beginning it's a little bit wonky, but I'm excited to see what happens in the future. Like I said before, I do want to see now, moving forward, I love how Peter deals with the death of Tony Stark and the relationship he develops with Happy because of that, and how they talk about the influence of the Avengers and Iron Man and all that sort of stuff. But in the next movie, I now want it to be very Peter Spider-Man centric.
Yeah.
Obviously, the events of what's going to happen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward will influence it to some capacity.
Right.
But I definitely want the Spider-Man movies going forward to be Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I thought it was great.
It's a good movie.
Score's great. Everything was great.
Yeah.
Everything's great. 3D was phenomenal.
3D was mind-blowingly good.
I'm going to go see it in 3D.
I got to go see it in 3D.
I loved it. Now, watching it, of course, there are some things here and there, little tweaky little issues here and there, but the Mysterio scene where he goes full-on Mysterio and messes Peter up, I was like, oh, I'm loving this. I'm like, I love that. That whole sequence might be my favorite Spider-Man sequence of any of the MCU movies up to this point.
Nice.
Anything in Civil War, anything in Infinity War, anything in Endgame, like that. God, it was
that
good.
That scene, it's tough to make me anxious. That scene made me super anxious.
We saw it in IMAX, and a lot of those scenes are expanded, so they're bigger.
Yeah.
So you feel even more like it hits you even harder.
Jolted.
I really wish it was an IMAX 3D because I think if the combination of IMAX and 3D would have knocked that thing out of the park. But unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah.
But guys, let us know in the comments below what you thought about Spider-Man Far From Home. Any Easter eggs, character moments. I really would like to see the comments just talk about where we came from Endgame into this movie, your expectations, what you thought, how they handled the events, all that stuff. I think this movie lends itself to so many discussions because it had so much work to do, and I think it did a lot of it really, really well. And, what's going to happen to the future Peter Parker now that his identity
and also another thing to take away from this is pay attention to your Peter tingles.
Peter Tingles in Majingles.
Yep.
I love that. I read an old I had a Spider-Man Far From Home prelude comic, and in it they put a classic issue from 1971 where Peter flies over to London to try to find Gwen Stacy, but he's in London. And throughout that book, he references it as him getting a tingle. And I went, oh, my God, there is so much being drawn from the comics that I don't think enough people are giving them credit for.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I love when people are like, it's not an accurate Spider-Man. I'm like, y'all need to read some more comics. It's fine.
There's a lot of them.
I have the proof that it is, so you're wrong.
Let's shut it off before I keep going.
You're wrong.
It goes on another 40-minute rant of comics.
Yep. Yeah.
But guys, let us know what you thought. Make sure you guys subscribe here on Hyper RPG, and we'll catch you guys in the next review. Bye.